The thunderous crack of a gunshot echoed through the dusty streets of Silver Creek, Texas, in 1875. But it wasn't the sound that caught Adam Ramirez's attention. It was the woman with fiery auburn hair being dragged from the stagecoach, her face streaked with tears and determination despite the jeers of the men surrounding her. Slinging his rifle over his shoulder, Adam stepped off the boardwalk, his weathered boots kicking up dust as he approached the commotion, unaware that this moment would forever change the course of his life. Lillian Lawrence clutched her small leather-bound journal to her chest, the only possession she had managed to keep after the bandits raided the stagecoach on her journey west. At 22, she had left behind everything in Boston: her family name, her inheritance, and the scandal that threatened to destroy what little reputation she had left. The stagecoach driver and the other passengers had abandoned her at the first sign of trouble, leaving her alone with nothing but the dress on her back and the words in her journal. "What are we supposed to do with her?" one of the men shouted, his grimy hand still gripping Lillian's arm. "She's got no money, no ticket, nowhere to go. She's just another burden on the town," the station master replied, shaking his head. "Silver Creek can't afford to take in every stray that comes wandering through." Adam watched as the woman tried to stand taller despite the exhaustion evident in her swaying posture. Her emerald eyes flickered with defiance even as her body threatened to collapse. He had seen that look before in the eyes of wild horses fighting against the breaking. Something about her called to him, like a distant melody carried on the wind. "She's a burden, all right," another man called out, his voice thick with liquor despite the early hour. "Probably some fancy Eastern girl running from something. We don't need her kind here." Adam stepped forward, his spurs jingling with each determined stride. At 28, he had spent more than a decade working the ranches around Silver Creek, earning a reputation as a man who could tame the wildest broncos and navigate the harshest landscapes. The townsfolk respected him, even if they didn't always understand his quiet ways. "They called her a burden," Adam said, his voice cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. "Then I'll carry her." Silence fell over the group as Adam approached Lillian, removing his hat in a gesture of respect. "Madam, I'm Adam Ramirez. I have a small ranch outside of town. If you need somewhere to stay until you figure out your next steps, I can offer you safe lodging." Lillian eyed him suspiciously, years of caution making her hesitate. "Why would you help a stranger, Mr. Ramirez?" "Because everyone deserves a second chance," he replied simply, replacing his hat. "And because I've been where you are, alone in a strange place with nowhere to turn." The station master stepped forward, his brow furrowed. "Adam, you can't be serious. We know nothing about this woman." "I don't need to know her past to offer her a present," Adam replied firmly. "My mother would turn in her grave if I left a woman alone on these streets." Lillian swallowed hard, weighing her limited options. The stagecoach was gone, along with the small trunk containing her belongings. The next stage wouldn't arrive for a week, and she had no money for a room at the town's only hotel. Pride urged her to refuse his help, but practicality won out. "I accept your offer, Mr. Ramirez," she said, her voice steady despite her circumstances. "But I want to be clear, I will work for my keep. I'm not looking for charity." A hint of a smile touched Adam's lips as he nodded. "Fair enough. My horse is tied up outside the general store. We can pick up a few supplies before heading to the ranch." The crowd slowly dispersed, some muttering disapproval while others seemed relieved that the problem had been solved without further drama. As Adam led Lillian toward the general store, he noticed how she held herself with dignity despite her disheveled appearance. "I should warn you," he said quietly, "the ranch isn't much. Just a small house, a barn, and about 50 acres with some cattle and horses. It's nothing like what you might be used to back east." Lillian's laugh held no humor. "Mr. Ramirez, whatever you have is paradise compared to what I left behind." Inside the general store, Adam gathered basic supplies: flour, coffee, sugar, and some fabric that Lillian could use to make herself another dress. The shopkeeper's wife, a kindly woman named Martha, took pity on Lillian and offered her a shawl from behind the counter. "Nights get cold out at the Ramirez place," she said with a maternal smile. "Adam's a good man, but he forgets that not everyone has his resistance to the elements." "Thank you," Lillian replied, accepting the gift with genuine gratitude. I'll return it when I can. Keep it, child. Consider it a welcome to Silver Creek, Martha insisted. Though I must say you've chosen an interesting way to arrive. While Adam settled his bill, Martha pulled Lillian aside. Adam Ramirez has been alone since his father passed 3 years ago. He's respected around here but keeps to himself. Whatever your story is, and we all have one, you'll be safe with him. Before Lillian could respond, Adam returned with his purchases packed in saddlebags. Ready to go. It's about an hour's ride to the ranch. Outside, Adam's horse, a magnificent chestnut stallion with a white star on his forehead, stood patiently at the hitching post. Adam secured the supplies and then turned to Lillian. "Ever ridden before?" he asked, offering his hand to help her mount. "Not since I was a child," she admitted, allowing him to boost her onto the horse. Her skirts arranged awkwardly across the saddle, she felt vulnerable and exposed sitting atop the massive animal. Adam swung up behind her with practiced ease, his arms creating a protective circle around her as he took the reins. "Just relax and move with the horse," he advised, his breath warm against her ear. "Thunder knows the way home." As they rode out of town, Lillian became acutely aware of Adam's solid presence behind her. His chest pressed against her back with each breath, and the steady rhythm of the horse's hooves lulled her into a strange sense of security. The vast Texas landscape spread out before them, rolling hills covered with scrubby vegetation, punctuated by the occasional oak tree offering shelter from the relentless sun. "May I ask what brings you to Silver Creek?" Adam inquired after they had ridden in silence for some time. "It's not exactly on the way to anywhere important," Lillian tensed, unsure how much to reveal. "I was headed to San Antonio," she finally said. "I have had a position waiting as a schoolteacher." The position required a letter of recommendation and references, which were in my trunk. "Without them, I doubt they'll consider me suitable," she sighed. "And even if I could somehow prove my qualifications, I have no way to get to San Antonio now." Adam nodded thoughtfully. "Silver Creek has been talking about starting a proper school. Right now, the children just gather at the church when Pastor Williams has time to teach them, which isn't often. Maybe once you've settled, you could speak with Mayor Collins about it." Hope flickered briefly in Lillian's heart, but she quickly suppressed it. "Perhaps. Though I imagine they'd want to know why I left Boston so abruptly. People out here tend to care more about what you can do than what you've done," Adam replied. "The West gives second chances to those willing to work for them." They continued their journey in companionable silence, the landscape gradually changing as they left the main road and followed a narrower trail that wound through a small creek and up a gentle slope. Finally, a modest ranch house came into view, nestled against a backdrop of oak trees. A weathered barn stood nearby, and in the distance, cattle grazed on the sparse grass. "It's beautiful," Lillian murmured, taking in the peaceful scene. Adam chuckled. "It's humble, but it's home. My father built that house with his own hands when he brought my mother out here from San Antonio. They raised me here, taught me everything I know about ranching." As they approached the house, a border collie came bounding out to greet them, barking joyfully at Adam's return. "That's Patch," Adam explained, dismounting before helping Lillian down. Her legs trembled after the long ride, and he steadied her with a firm hand on her elbow. "He's the best cattle dog in the county, aren't you, boy?" Patch wagged his tail enthusiastically, circling them before cautiously approaching Lillian to sniff her hand. After a moment's consideration, he licked her fingers, apparently granting his approval. "He doesn't usually take to strangers so quickly," Adam observed, leading Thunder toward the barn. "You can go on inside, door's not locked." Lillian hesitated before pushing open the front door of the ranch house. The interior was simple but clean: a main room with a stone fireplace, a rough-hewn table with 4 chairs, and a rocking chair by the window. A doorway led to what appeared to be a bedroom, and a small kitchen area occupied the back corner of the main room. She ran her fingers over the back of the rocking chair, noting the smooth finish that came from years of use. The house smelled of leather, coffee, and wood smoke, unfamiliar but not unpleasant. It struck her how different this was from the grand house she had grown up in, with its multiple parlors and servants' quarters. Adam entered a few minutes later, carrying the supplies from town. "It's not much," he said, misinterpreting her silence for disappointment. "No, it's perfect," she replied honestly. just different from what I'm used to." He nodded, setting the packages on the table. "I'll make up a bed for you in here and I'll take the barn for now. Tomorrow we can figure out something more permanent." "I can't take your bed, Mr. Ramirez," Lillian protested. "The barn would be fine for me." Adam shook his head firmly. "My mother would haunt me if I put a lady in the barn. Besides, I often sleep out there when I'm tending to a sick animal or expecting a new foal." Too exhausted to argue further, Lillian nodded. "Thank you, and please call me Lillian." "Lillian," he repeated, her name sounding different in his deep voice. "Then I'm Adam." Later that evening, after a simple meal of beans and cornbread, Adam sat at the table mending a bridle while Lillian washed their few dishes. The domesticity of the scene struck her as oddly comfortable, despite the circumstances that had brought her here. "Tomorrow I'll show you around the ranch," Adam said, not looking up from his work. "If you're serious about earning your keep, there's plenty that needs doing." "I am serious," she affirmed. "I've never been one to sit idle." He glanced up at her, his dark eyes studying her face. "What did you do in Boston besides prepare to be a teacher?" Lillian carefully dried a plate before answering. "I taught music to young ladies from good families. Piano primarily, though some voice instruction as well." "No piano here, I'm afraid," he said with a slight smile. "Though the Coyotes provide plenty of singing at night. I also managed my father's household after my mother passed," she continued, setting the dried dishes on a shelf. "I can cook, clean, mend clothing, and keep accounts." Adam raised an eyebrow. Impressive skills for a Boston society lady. "I never said I was from society," Lillian corrected him quickly. "My father was a professor at the university. We lived comfortably but modestly." It wasn't entirely a lie, though it omitted the Lawrence family's connections to some of Boston's oldest money through her mother's side connections that had been severed when the scandal broke. Adam nodded, seemingly satisfied with her answer. "Well, those skills will serve you well here. The West doesn't tolerate useless people for long." "Is that why they called me a burden back in town?" she asked, the memory of those hostile faces still fresh in her mind. Setting down the bridle, Adam sighed. "Silver Creek has had its share of troubles lately. Drought has hurt the cattle, the railroad bypassed us for Sweetwater, and last winter was particularly harsh. People are wary of anything that might strain resources further." "I understand," Lillian said softly. "I've been unwelcome before." Something in her tone made Adam look at her more closely, but he didn't press for details. Instead, he stood and stretched, his tall frame nearly touching the low ceiling. "Dawn comes early on a ranch," he said. "You should get some rest. There's water in the pitcher by the bed if you need it, and extra blankets in the chest." After Adam left for the barn, Lillian sat alone in the rocking chair, watching the last embers of the fire die in the hearth. Her journal lay open in her lap, but she couldn't bring herself to write about the day's events just yet. Everything had happened so quickly: the stagecoach robbery, being abandoned in a strange town, and now finding herself in the home of a man she had just met. A man who had offered help when no one else would. A man who called her Lillian in a way that made her name sound like a melody. With a sigh, she closed the journal and prepared for bed, wondering what tomorrow would bring on this Texas ranch that had unexpectedly become her sanctuary. The rooster's crow woke Lillian before dawn. For a disorienting moment, she couldn't remember where she was, the unfamiliar walls and the scent of sun-dried linens confusing her sleep-addled mind. Then yesterday's events rushed back, and she sat up quickly, pushing aside the homespun quilt that had kept her warm through the night. Outside, she could hear movement: the soft nickering of horses, the shuffling of cattle, and Adam's low voice giving commands to his dog. Hurriedly, she dressed in the same travel-worn clothes she had arrived in, making a mental note to use the fabric Adam had purchased to sew herself something new as soon as possible. When she emerged from the house, the sky was just beginning to lighten, painting the horizon in shades of pink and gold. Adam stood by the corral, tossing feed to a small group of horses. He glanced up as she approached, surprise briefly crossing his face. "You're up early," he observed, dusting off his hands. "Most city folks sleep till the sun's well overhead." "I've never been one for idleness," she replied, pulling her shawl tighter against the morning chill. "What can I do to help?" Adam studied her for a moment, then nodded toward the barn. "There's a basket inside. Chickens need feeding and you can collect any eggs while you're at it. Lillian set to work, finding the chicken coop behind the barn. The hens clucked indignantly as she scattered feed, but soon settled down enough for her to collect a half-dozen eggs. By the time she returned to the house, Adam had brought in firewood and was stoking the hearth. "You know how to make biscuits?" he asked, setting a cast iron skillet on the counter. "I do," she affirmed, rolling up her sleeves, "though I can't promise they'll be as good as you're used to." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "Been making my own since my mother passed. Anything would be an improvement." They worked together preparing breakfast, moving around the small kitchen with surprising ease for two strangers. Lillian mixed biscuit dough while Adam sliced salt pork to fry with the eggs. The domesticity of it struck her again how natural it felt to be here in this simple house, sharing morning tasks with a man she barely knew. Over breakfast, Adam outlined the day ahead. "I need to check the south pasture fencing had reports of wolves in the area. After that, I'll be breaking a new horse for the Wilsons in town." He paused, studying her face. "You're welcome to explore the ranch, but stay within sight of the house. Not all the cattle are friendly to strangers, and there's a drop-off near the creek that can be dangerous if you don't know it's there." "Actually," Lillian said carefully, "I was hoping you might show me what needs doing here. I meant what I said about working for my keep." Adam considered this, then nodded. "House could use a good cleaning. Been a while since anyone gave it proper attention. There's mending in that basket by the rocking chair, 2 shirts and such that I haven't had time to fix." "Consider it done," she replied, already mentally cataloging the tasks ahead. After breakfast, Adam saddled Thunder and rode out to check the fences, leaving Lillian alone with the house and her thoughts. She spent the morning sweeping and scrubbing, opening windows to let in fresh air, and organizing the modest kitchen. As she worked, she hummed softly old folk songs her mother had taught her, remnants of a life that seemed increasingly distant. By midday, the main room gleamed with cleanliness, and the scent of lemon and beeswax had replaced the musty odor that had lingered in corners. She had just settled into the rocking chair with Adam's mending when hoofbeats announced his return. He entered, removing his hat and hanging it on a peg by the door, then stood still, taking in the transformed space. His eyes moved from the polished table to the organized shelves to the vase of wildflowers she had gathered and placed in the center of the table. "You've been busy," he said, his tone unreadable. Suddenly uncertain, Lillian set aside her sewing. "I hope I haven't overstepped, I just thought." "No," Adam interrupted, his expression softening. "It's good, reminds me of when my mother was alive." He ran a hand along the back of a chair, noticing the shine. "She always said a clean home makes for a clean spirit." Relief washed over Lillian. "My mother said something similar. Outer order creates inner calm was her favorite saying." Adam nodded, then gestured to the door. "I've got that horse to break this afternoon. Would you like to come watch? Might give you a better sense of what ranch life is like." Surprised by the invitation, Lillian eagerly accepted. They walked together to the corral where a magnificent black stallion paced nervously, eyeing them with suspicion. "That's Midnight," Adam explained, leaning against the fence. "Owner bought him from some traders passing through, but he's never been properly broken. Too spirited for most, but I see something in him, intelligence in those eyes." Lillian watched as Adam entered the corral, moving slowly and speaking in low, soothing tones. The horse snorted and backed away, but Adam continued his steady approach, never rushing, never threatening. It was like watching a dance, the man and horse circling each other, establishing boundaries, building trust. "The trick," Adam called to her without taking his eyes off Midnight, "isn't breaking their spirit at all. It's forming a partnership. Horse needs to know you respect him, but also that you won't tolerate foolishness." Over the next hour, Lillian witnessed a transformation. Adam worked patiently, allowing Midnight to grow accustomed to his touch, then to the feel of a blanket on his back, and finally to the weight of a saddle. There were moments of resistance. The stallion reared twice, nearly striking Adam with his hooves, but each time, Adam stood his ground without aggression. "You're very good with him," Lillian observed during a pause when Adam came to get a drink of water from the bucket she had brought out. He shrugged, though she detected a hint of pride in his eyes. "Been doing this since I was a boy. My father taught me. He had a way with horses that people said was magic, but it was just patience and respect." Like how you treated me yesterday, she said softly, when everyone else saw a burden. Adam met her gaze, his eyes serious. Everyone deserves the chance to show their worth, horse or human. The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken understanding. Then Adam turned back to the corral, resuming his work with Midnight. By late afternoon, the stallion had accepted the saddle and bridle, though riding would come another day. As Adam released Midnight into the corral to rest, Lillian noticed a rider approaching from the direction of town. "Expecting company?" she asked, nodding toward the dust cloud on the horizon. Adam squinted against the sun. "That's Sheriff Parker. Wonder what brings him out this way." They waited as the sheriff approached, a stocky man with a graying mustache and weathered face that had seen its share of troubles. He tipped his hat to Lillian before addressing Adam. "Afternoon, Ramirez." "Word in town is you've taken in our stagecoach refugee," he said, his eyes moving between them. "Miss Lawrence is staying here while she sorts out her situation," Adam replied evenly. "Is there a problem, Sheriff?" Parker dismounted, tying his horse to the fence post. "No problem exactly. Just doing my duty." Stage driver reported being robbed about 10 miles east of town. Said they took valuables from all passengers, including a young woman who got left behind when they made their escape. "That would be me," Lillian confirmed, stepping forward. "They took everything except my journal." "Description of the bandits?" the sheriff asked, pulling out a small notebook. "3 men, all masked. One had a scar visible below his mask here," she said, indicating her right cheek. "Another was missing 2 fingers on his left hand. They took my trunk, which contained all my possessions, including letters of recommendation for a teaching position in San Antonio." The sheriff jotted this down, nodding. "Sounds like the Sawyer gang. They've been working this area for months. Hit 3 stages and a bank in Sweetwater." He looked up at Lillian. "Don't suppose you had anything valuable enough for them to keep identifiable?" Lillian hesitated, then reached for the locket hidden beneath her collar. "They didn't find this. It was my mother's silver with an engraving of a lily on the front. Inside is a small portrait of her. There was a matching silver hairbrush in my trunk with the same lily design." "Good, something we can look for if we catch up to them." The sheriff tucked away his notebook. "Now there's the matter of your situation, Miss Lawrence. Town council met this morning. They're concerned about a single woman of unknown background staying out here alone with a bachelor." Adam's jaw tightened. "Miss Lawrence is under my protection, Sheriff. Nothing improper is happening here." "Never suggested there was," Parker replied mildly. "But appearances matter, especially in a small town. Council's offering a room at Widow Hanson's boarding house in town if the lady prefers." Before Adam could respond, Lillian spoke up. "Thank you for the council's concern, Sheriff, but I've agreed to work for Mr. Ramirez in exchange for room and board until I can arrange passage to San Antonio or find employment here. I assure you, my reputation is safe in his care." The sheriff studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Fair enough, just know the offer stands." He turned to Adam. "Almost forgot why I really came out here. Telegram came for you from your cousin in El Paso, something about cattle prices and a potential buyer." He reached into his vest pocket and produced a folded piece of paper. Adam took it with a nod of thanks. "Appreciate you bringing it out, Sheriff." After the sheriff departed, Adam unfolded the telegram, his brow furrowing as he read. "Miguel says cattle prices are dropping in El Paso, suggests I consider selling now rather than waiting for fall roundup." "Is that bad news?" Lillian asked, noticing the concern in his expression. "Could be. I was counting on those sales to get through winter." He refolded the paper and tucked it into his shirt pocket. "Nothing to be done about it tonight, though. Let's see about supper." As they walked back to the house, Lillian sensed Adam's preoccupation with the news. Ranch life, she was learning, balanced constantly on the edge of prosperity and disaster, with weather, market prices, and luck all playing their parts. In the kitchen, she set about preparing a meal from the supplies. They had beans again, but this time with cornbread and some dried apples she had found in a canister. Adam sat at the table calculating figures in a small ledger book, his forehead creased with worry. "How many cattle do you have?" she asked, hoping to understand his situation better. 43 head, not counting calves," he replied without looking up. "Not a large herd by Texas standards, but it's been growing each year." Problem is, I need at least 30 to maintain breeding stock, which doesn't leave many to sell if prices are low. Lillian stirred the beans thoughtfully. What about the horses? You seem to have a special talent with them. Adam glanced up, considering. Breaking horses brings in steady money, but not enough to run the ranch. Though, he paused, an idea forming. I've been thinking about breeding horses specifically for ranch work. The right bloodlines could produce animals worth 5 times what an ordinary cow pony brings. That sounds promising, Lillian encouraged, setting plates on the table. It's a long-term plan. Takes years to establish a reputation for quality horseflesh. He closed the ledger with a sigh. For now, I may need to find additional work in town to make up the difference. Over supper, they discussed possibilities Adam might offer his services as a blacksmith, a skill he had learned from his father, or help the stage coach company with their horses. Lillian suggested inquiring about the school, which led them to talk about education and books. There's a small shelf of books in the bedroom, Adam mentioned. My mother's collection, mostly classics and poetry. She was educated back east before she married my father. I noticed them, Lillian admitted. Tennyson, Wordsworth, Shakespeare, she had excellent taste. She always said books were windows to worlds we might never see, Adam said, a fond smile softening his features. Used to read to me every night, even after I could read for myself. Said the sound of words was as important as their meaning. She sounds like a remarkable woman, Lillian observed, touched by this glimpse into his past. She was. Gave up a comfortable life to follow my father out here. Her family never forgave her for marrying a half-Mexican rancher with nothing but dreams and a strong back. His voice held old pain, quickly masked. But she never regretted it. Always said love was worth any sacrifice. The words hung in the air between them, laden with meaning neither was ready to examine too closely. Lillian busied herself clearing the dishes, while Adam excused himself to check on the animals before nightfall. Alone in the kitchen, Lillian found herself thinking about sacrifice and choices. She had left Boston not just because of scandal, but because staying meant accepting a life mapped out by others, a suitable marriage to a man who wanted her family connections, not her heart. The West offered freedom, despite its hardships. Here, a person could reinvent themselves based on their own merits. When Adam returned, they sat together by the fire, Lillian mending a tear in one of his shirts while he cleaned his rifle. The comfortable silence between them felt like a conversation in itself, an acknowledgement that they had found an unexpected harmony in their temporary arrangement. Sheriff seemed concerned about your reputation, Adam said finally, not looking up from his work. People always are, she replied with a slight smile, though usually they are more concerned about appearances than actual virtue. Town will talk, they always do. Let them, I've weathered worse gossip than this. Adam glanced up, curiosity in his eyes. In Boston. Lillian hesitated, then decided to offer at least part of the truth. My father died last year. There was an incident afterward. A man I thought I could trust proved otherwise. The details aren't important, but it became impossible for me to stay. This man, Adam said carefully, did he harm you? Not physically, she assured him. But he damaged something equally valuable, my trust, and in doing so, he ensured that doors which had once been open to me were firmly shut. Adam nodded, understanding in his eyes. Out here, your past matters less than what you do now. People will judge you by your actions, not rumors. I hope so, she said softly. I'd like to start fresh, to be known for who I am rather than what others say about me. You will be, he promised. Silver Creek has its faults, but people here recognize honest work and good character. Give it time. As darkness fell completely, Adam stood and stretched. I should head to the barn. Dawn comes early. Thank you, Lillian said suddenly, looking up from her sewing. Not just for the lodging, but for believing in me when you had no reason to. Adam paused at the door, his expression thoughtful. Everyone deserves someone to believe in them, Lillian. Sleep well. After he left, Lillian remained by the fire, finishing her mending and listening to the night sounds, crickets chirping, an owl hooting in the distance, the occasional snort from the horses in the corral. This place, so different from the city she had known all her life, already felt more like home than Boston ever had. Days passed into weeks as Lillian settled into life at the Ramirez ranch. Each morning brought new tasks, gathering eggs, churning butter, weeding the small vegetable garden she had discovered behind the house. In the afternoons, when Adam returned from working with the cattle or training horses, she would have fresh bread or biscuits waiting, the house clean and orderly. Using the fabric Adam had purchased in town, Lillian sewed herself 2 simple dresses, one for everyday work and one slightly finer for Sundays. She took apart her travel dress, salvaging buttons and trim to add detail to her new garments. Adam watched her transformation with quiet appreciation. Gone was the frightened, disheveled woman from the stagecoach, replaced by a capable, confident person who moved through the ranch with purpose. He found himself looking forward to returning to the house each day, knowing she would be there with a smile and often a question about some aspect of ranch life. On a particularly hot Sunday, after returning from the weekly church service in town, Adam found Lillian sitting on the porch, fanning herself with a piece of cardboard. "Too warm for you?" he asked, setting down his hat and joining her on the bench. "It's different from Boston," she admitted with a laugh, "though I'm getting used to it." Adam studied her profile, noticing how the sun had kissed her fair skin with a light freckling across her nose and cheeks. Her auburn hair, pulled back in a simple bun, caught the light like burnished copper. "You seem at home here," he observed, "more than I expected from a city woman." Lillian turned to face him, her green eyes bright with amusement. "Are you saying I've exceeded your expectations, Mr. Ramirez?" "Considerably," he admitted with a rare, full smile. "Though I'm beginning to think you could thrive anywhere you set your mind to." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the distant lowing of cattle and the buzz of cicadas in the heat. Finally, Lillian spoke. "People were friendlier at church today. Mrs. Wilson actually invited me to her quilting circle next week. See, I told you they'd come around," Adam said. "Though I suspect your apple pie at last week's church social helped your cause considerably," Lillian laughed. "The secret ingredient is cinnamon, works every time." Adam hesitated, then broached the subject he'd been considering for days. "Mayor Collins approached me after the service, asked if you might be interested in teaching some of the children a few days a week. Nothing formal yet, just gathering in the church until they can build a proper schoolhouse." Surprise and delight lit up Lillian's face. "Truly? But I have no references, no," he said. "Mrs. Wilson vouched for your education after hearing you discuss literature with the pastor. And apparently, you impressed Mrs. Parker by helping her youngest with his letters during the social." "I'd love to teach again," Lillian said softly, hope evident in her voice. "When would I start?" "Next Monday, if you're willing. Pay isn't much. Families will contribute what they can. Some might pay in goods rather than cash." "That's perfectly acceptable," she assured him. "I'm just grateful for the opportunity." Adam watched emotions play across her expressive face: excitement, nervousness, determination. In the weeks she had been at the ranch, he had come to admire not just her beauty, but her resilience and spirit. The thought of her leaving to take up residence in town bothered him more than he cared to admit. "You'll still stay here, won't you?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "The ride to town isn't bad, and the teaching is only 3 days a week to start." Lillian looked at him in surprise. "I assumed. With me earning an income, you'd expect me to move to town. Mrs. Hanson has rooms and no," Adam interrupted, then softened his tone. "That is, I've grown accustomed to having you here. The house feels right with you in it." He cleared his throat, embarrassed by his own admission. "Besides, you've improved my cooking considerably. I'd hate to go back to my own burned biscuits." A smile tugged at Lillian's lips. "Well, we can't have that, can we? If you're certain I'm not imposing, I'd prefer to stay here." "It's settled then," Adam said, standing up abruptly. "I should check on that new calf. Born week yesterday, needs extra attention." As he walked toward the barn, Adam silently chastised himself for his awkwardness. What was it about Lillian Lawrence that tied his tongue in knots? He had never been a man of many words, but he usually managed to express himself clearly enough. Yet around her, especially lately, he found himself fumbling like an inexperienced boy. The truth, which he was only beginning to acknowledge to himself, was that his feelings for Lillian had grown beyond mere appreciation for her help around the ranch. He admired her courage, her intelligence, her gentle strength. The way she sang softly to herself while working in the garden. The thoughtful questions she asked about the cattle and horses, genuinely interested in learning. The kindness she showed to Patch, who had taken to following her around like a devoted shadow, but Adam knew better than to act on these feelings. Lillian had come to Silver Creek running from something or someone in Boston. She was still finding her feet in this new life. The last thing she needed was a rough cowboy complicating matters with unwanted attentions. Besides, what could he offer a woman like her? A small ranch constantly at the mercy of weather and market prices. A simple house that, despite her improvements, remained humble at best. A life of hard work with few luxuries. No, better to keep his feelings to himself and be grateful for her presence, however temporary it might be. Monday morning dawned bright and clear, the perfect day for Lillian's first teaching session in Silver Creek. Adam insisted on riding with her to town, claiming he needed supplies but transparently wanting to ensure she arrived safely and was properly received. They rode double on Thunder, Lillian now comfortable with the arrangement after weeks of occasional trips to town. Her teaching materials a slate, some books from Mrs. Ramirez's collection, and paper and pencils purchased from the general store were packed carefully in Adam's saddlebags. Nervous? Adam asked as the town came into view. A little, Lillian admitted. It's been some time since I taught in a formal capacity and never with such a wide range of ages. You'll do fine, he assured her. These kids are eager to learn. Most of their parents barely had schooling themselves. The church was a simple white painted building with a modest steeple. When they arrived, several children were already waiting outside with their mothers. Lillian recognized some from church services, though others were from outlying farms and ranches she hadn't met before. Mrs. Wilson greeted them warmly, introducing Lillian to the other mothers and the 12 children who would be her first pupils. Ages ranged from 6 to 14, with varying levels of previous education. "We're so grateful you're willing to teach our children, Miss Lawrence," Mrs. Wilson said. "Pastor Williams does his best, but he has so many other duties." "I'm happy to help," Lillian replied sincerely. "Education was my father's passion, and he passed that love to me." As the mothers departed, leaving Lillian with her class, Adam lingered by the church door. "I'll be at the general store if you need anything," he told her. "I'll return at noon to check on you." Lillian nodded gratefully, then turned to face her students, who regarded her with expressions ranging from curiosity to skepticism to excitement. "Good morning," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I'm Miss Lawrence, and I'm delighted to be your teacher. Before we begin our lessons, I'd like to learn a bit about each of you." By the time Adam returned at noon, Lillian had organized the children into groups based on their reading abilities, taught a basic geography lesson using a map she had drawn on the church blackboard, and started the older children on mathematics while helping the younger ones with their letters. He stood in the doorway, watching unnoticed as she knelt beside a small girl with blonde braids, patiently guiding her hand to form the letter A on her slate. Lillian's face was animated with genuine interest as the child showed her the completed letter, her praise making the girl beam with pride. Something tightened in Adam's chest at the sight, a yearning he hadn't allowed himself to acknowledge. In that moment, he could see Lillian not just as a temporary guest at his ranch, but as a permanent part of his life. The vision was so clear it startled him. Lillian in the garden with children of their own, teaching them as tenderly as she taught these town children. He cleared his throat and Lillian looked up, a smile lighting her face when she saw him. "Children, let's break for lunch," she announced. "Remember to practice your letters and be back in 1 hour." As the children filed out, many stopping to show Adam their work with pride, Lillian gathered her teaching materials. "How did it go?" he asked, taking the books from her to carry. "Wonderfully," she replied, her eyes bright with satisfaction. "They're eager to learn, especially the older ones who understand how knowledge can improve their prospects." "And you?" Adam asked as they stepped outside into the sunshine. "Did you enjoy it?" "More than I can say," she admitted. "Teaching has always felt like my calling. To do it again, even under such modest circumstances, feels right." They ate lunch on a bench outside the general store, sharing bread, cheese, and apples while Lillian enthusiastically described her morning and plans for the afternoon session. Adam listened, content to watch the animation in her face and the graceful movements of her hands as she illustrated her points. "I should get back," she said finally, gathering the remains of their lunch. "Thank you for checking on me." I'll return at 4 to ride home with you, Adam promised. The mayor wants to discuss possibly building a proper schoolhouse, so I'll meet with him while you finish teaching. As Lillian walked back to the church, several townspeople nodded greetings to her, a marked contrast to her reception that first day. Adam noted this with satisfaction. Silver Creek was beginning to see what he had recognized from the start. Lillian Lawrence was no burden but an asset to their community. The afternoon brought an unexpected visitor to the church. Sheriff Parker arrived just as Lillian was dismissing her class, his expression serious as he approached her. "Miss Lawrence, might I have a word?" he asked, removing his hat. Lillian felt a flutter of apprehension but nodded. "Of course, Sheriff. Children, remember your assignments for Wednesday." When the last child had departed, the sheriff produced a small object from his pocket. "This look familiar to you?" Lillian gasped, reaching out with trembling fingers. "My mother's hairbrush. Where did you find it?" "Caught one of the Sawyer gang trying to sell it in Sweetwater," Parker explained. "Man with the scarred cheek you described. He's in custody but claims the other two have your trunk and the rest of the valuables." "Were there papers with it?" Lillian asked eagerly. "Letters of recommendation, certificates?" "Not with him," the sheriff replied regretfully. "But we're closing in on the others. I thought you'd want to know we recovered at least this much." Lillian cradled the silver brush, running her fingers over the delicate lily engraving that matched her locket. "Thank you, Sheriff. This means more to me than you know." "There's something else," Parker said, his tone turning cautious. "Man we caught had some interesting things to say about a young woman from Boston. Claims there's a reward being offered by someone back east for information about a Miss Lillian Lawrence." Lillian's blood ran cold. "A reward? From whom?" "Didn't say, just thought you should know." The sheriff studied her face. "Anything you want to tell me, Miss Lawrence? Silver Creek protects its own, which you're becoming, but we need to know if trouble's following you." Before Lillian could respond, Adam appeared in the doorway. "Everything all right here?" he asked, his eyes moving between Lillian's pale face and the sheriff's serious expression. "Sheriff Parker recovered my mother's hairbrush," Lillian explained, holding up the silver item. "One of the bandits has been caught." Adam stepped closer, resting a protective hand on her shoulder. "That's good news, isn't it?" "There's more," Sheriff Parker said, addressing Adam directly. "Someone back east is offering a reward for information about Miss Lawrence. Thought you both should be aware in case strangers come asking questions." Adam's hand tightened slightly on Lillian's shoulder. "Appreciate the warning, Sheriff. We'll be careful." After the sheriff departed, Adam turned to Lillian, concern evident in his expression. "Want to tell me what that's about?" Lillian clutched the hairbrush, her thoughts racing. She owed Adam the truth, especially now that her past threatened to follow her to Silver Creek, but the words stuck in her throat, fear of his judgment overwhelming her. "Not here," she managed finally. "Please, can we go home first?" Adam nodded, gathering her teaching materials without further questions. The ride back to the ranch passed in tense silence, Lillian's mind frantically sorting through what to say and how much to reveal. When they reached the ranch, Adam tended to thunder while Lillian went inside to prepare supper, grateful for the familiar task to steady her nerves. By the time Adam entered the house, she had a simple meal ready and her thoughts somewhat organized. They ate in silence until Lillian finally set down her fork and looked directly at Adam. "The man offering the reward is likely Harrison Blackwell," she began. "He was my father's assistant at the university and after father's death appointed himself as my protector, unwanted though his protection was." Adam listened intently as she continued. "He asked me to marry him, claiming it was my father's dying wish. When I refused, he became insistent. Said that without a husband, I would lose my standing in society, that no respectable family would employ me as a teacher." Her voice grew stronger as she spoke, the relief of finally sharing her story overwhelming her fear. "One night, after a particularly unpleasant encounter where he threatened to ruin my reputation if I continued to refuse him, I discovered something disturbing: papers in my father's study showing that Harrison had been embezzling from the department funds for years. When I confronted him, he—" Lillian paused, the memory still painful. "He tried to take the papers by force. In the struggle, a lamp was knocked over. The fire destroyed most of the evidence, though I managed to save a few documents. Harrison blamed me for the fire, claimed I had set it deliberately to hide my own theft. His family has considerable influence in Boston. People believed him. So you ran, Adam concluded softly. I had no choice. The teaching position in San Antonio was arranged through a friend of my mother's who believed my side of the story. But without the letters of recommendation and certificates that were in my trunk. You couldn't prove your qualifications, Adam finished for her, and now Harrison is looking for you. Lillian nodded miserably. I should leave Silver Creek. If he finds me here, he could cause trouble for everyone who's helped me, especially you. No, Adam said firmly, reaching across the table to take her hand. You're not running again. Silver Creek is your home now, and these people have accepted you. We'll face this together. But Harrison is dangerous, so am I. When someone threatens what's mine, Adam interrupted, then immediately looked embarrassed by his own words. That is what I care about. Lillian felt warmth spread through her at his slip, at the fierce protectiveness in his eyes. Adam, I can't ask you to put yourself at risk for me. You didn't ask. I'm offering. His thumb traced gentle circles on the back of her hand. Besides, we don't know for certain he'll find you here. And if he does, he'll have to deal with not just me, but Sheriff Parker and the rest of Silver Creek. Hope flickered in Lillian's heart. Perhaps Adam was right. Perhaps here, surrounded by people who knew her for who she truly was, she could finally stop running. Thank you, she whispered. For listening, for believing me. Always, he replied simply. That night, long after Adam had gone to the barn, Lillian sat by the fire, her mother's hairbrush in her lap and her journal open beside her. For the first time since arriving in Silver Creek, she found the words to describe her journey, not just the physical distance traveled, but the emotional path from fear to hope. She wrote about Adam, about the kindness in his eyes when everyone else saw only a burden, about the strength in his hands whether gentling a wild horse or passing her a cup of coffee in the morning. She wrote about the unexpected peace she had found on this small Texas ranch and the growing certainty that her heart had found its home. What she couldn't yet write, even in the privacy of her journal, was the truth she was only beginning to acknowledge to herself. She was falling in love with Adam Ramirez, a man who had carried her burden as if it weighed nothing at all. The following weeks brought a rhythm to their lives that felt increasingly natural. Lillian taught in town 3 days a week, her class growing as word spread of her skill and patience. On other days, she tended to the ranch house and garden, occasionally helping Adam with lighter ranch chores when he would allow it. Adam found excuses to accompany her to town regularly, ostensibly to conduct business but transparently to ensure her safety. The sheriff had reported no further news of Harrison Blackwell or the remaining Sawyer gang members, but Adam remained vigilant, unwilling to take chances with Lillian's welfare. Their evenings together lengthened as autumn approached, bringing cooler temperatures that made the fireplace a natural gathering spot. They would sit together after supper, Adam whittling or mending tack, Lillian sewing or preparing lessons for her students, talking softly about their days, or sometimes simply enjoying comfortable silence. It was during one such evening, with rain pattering gently on the roof, that Adam finally broached the subject they had both been dancing around. Mayor Collins asked me something interesting today, he began, setting aside the bridle he'd been repairing. Wanted to know if I had any plans to make our arrangement more permanent. Lillian's hands stilled in her lap, her heart suddenly racing. What did you tell him? Adam met her gaze steadily. That it wasn't his business, but it got me thinking. He paused, seeming to gather his courage. You've been here almost 3 months now. Winter's coming. People are talking. About us, she clarified softly. About us, he confirmed. About a woman living on a ranch with an unmarried man, even if I am sleeping in the barn. Does it bother you what people say? Adam shook his head. Not for myself, but I worry about your reputation, especially now that you're teaching the town's children. Lillian set aside her sewing and faced him fully. Adam, what are you trying to say? He stood abruptly, moving to stare out the window at the rain-soaked landscape. When he turned back, his expression was resolute. I'm not good with words, Lillian, never have been, but I need you to know that what started as kindness has become something else for me. He took a deep breath. I find myself thinking about you when you're not here. Looking forward to seeing your face when I come in from working. wondering what you'll think about some new idea I have for the ranch. Lillian remained silent, afraid to break the spell of his confession. I know you came here running from a man who tried to force you into marriage, Adam continued, his voice growing more confident. So I won't ask that of you, but I want you to know that if you choose to stay here permanently, it would make me the happiest man in Texas. Tears welled in Lillian's eyes, not of sadness but overwhelming emotion. Are you asking me to continue living here? As what, Adam? He crossed the room to kneel before her, taking her hands in his. As whatever you want to be, my housekeeper, if that's all you can offer. My friend, which you already are, my wife, if someday you could see me that way. His voice dropped to a whisper. I'm in love with you, Lillian Lawrence. Have been since I watched you stand tall when everyone else called you a burden. A tear slipped down Lillian's cheek as she squeezed his hands. When I arrived here, I had nothing but a journal and the clothes on my back. Now I have a teaching position, friends, a community that accepts me. She reached up to touch his face gently, and a man who saw value in me when I felt worthless. You were never worthless, Adam said fiercely. Not to me. I know that now, she whispered. You showed me my own strength by believing in it. She took a deep breath. I'm in love with you too, Adam. Have been since you said you'd carry my burden without even knowing what it was. Adam's face transformed with joy, years seeming to fall away as he smiled. Slowly, giving her time to withdraw if she wished, he leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers in a gentle, reverent kiss that spoke of promises and tomorrows. When they parted, both slightly breathless, Adam rested his forehead against hers. I don't have much to offer except this ranch and my heart, he murmured, but both are yours if you'll have them. They're more than enough, Lillian assured him, her eyes shining. More than I ever dared hope for. That night, for the first time since her arrival, Adam didn't return to the barn. Instead, he slept on a bedroll before the fire, unwilling to be separated from Lillian by the night air, but equally unwilling to compromise her honor before they had made their arrangement official. In the morning, they rode to town together to speak with the pastor about a wedding. November 15th was set as the date just over a month away, giving them time to prepare while still beating the worst of winter weather. News of their engagement spread quickly through Silver Creek, met with general approval and some good-natured teasing aimed at Adam for finally getting himself hitched. Mrs. Wilson immediately organized the town's women to help prepare for the celebration, while Mayor Collins offered the newly constructed town hall as the venue for the reception. As word spread beyond the town limits to neighboring communities, Lillian worried that Harrison might hear of it and come to cause trouble. Adam reassured her, reminding her that Sheriff Parker and his deputies were vigilant and that Silver Creek protected its own. 3 weeks before the wedding, Adam rode into town alone to order a special gift for Lillian, a proper gold wedding band, to replace the temporary one he had fashioned from a piece of braided leather. While there, he encountered Sheriff Parker outside the telegraph office, the lawman's expression unusually serious. Got some news you should know about, Ramirez, Parker said, gesturing for Adam to follow him to the sheriff's office. Inside, he closed the door before continuing. Caught the other 2 Sawyer gang members yesterday, had what was left of your fiancé's trunk. That's good news, isn't it? Adam asked, sensing there was more, found this among their possessions. Parker handed Adam a crumpled wanted poster. Seems they were debating whether to collect the reward. Adam stared at the paper in shock. It showed a reasonable likeness of Lillian, with the words information wanted at the top and reward. $500 for information leading to the location of Lillian Lawrence, wanted for questioning in connection with arson and theft, below. This is a lie, Adam said flatly, his hand clenching around the paper. Lillian explained everything. She was framed by this Blackwell character. I believe you, Parker assured him, but wanted posters don't care about the truth, only about spreading a message. And this one's been circulating for months, according to the Sawyers. Has anyone else in town seen this? Not that I know of. I took it from the Sawyers before bringing them in, and they're currently enjoying the hospitality of the Sweetwater jail. Parker leaned back in his chair. Question is, what do you want to do about it? Adam thought for a moment, then straightened with determination. First, I want to make sure no more of these reach Silver Creek, Second, I need to send a telegram to my cousin Miguel in El Paso. He has connections with a lawyer there who might help clear Lillian's name officially. And what will you tell Lillian? The sheriff asked. The truth, Adam replied without hesitation. She deserves to know, but I won't have her living in fear on what should be the happiest day of our lives. Parker nodded approvingly. Good man. For what it's worth, my deputies and I will keep an eye out for strangers asking questions. Silver Creek takes care of its own, and Miss Lawrence, soon to be Mrs. Ramirez, is definitely one of ours now. Adam left the sheriff's office with the wanted poster securely hidden in his vest, and a mixture of anger and determination fueling his steps. He sent his telegram to Miguel, then completed his original errand at the jeweler's before heading back to the ranch, his mind working through how best to share this development with Lillian. She was in the garden when he returned, harvesting the last of the season's vegetables before the first frost. Her face lit up at the sight of him, and for a moment, Adam considered keeping the poster to himself, not wanting to dim the happiness that had bloomed between them in recent weeks. But their relationship had been built on truth from the beginning, and he wouldn't damage that foundation now. Lillian, he called, dismounting and securing Thunder to the hitching post. We need to talk. Something in his tone made her stand immediately, brushing dirt from her skirt. What's wrong? Inside the house, Adam showed her the wanted poster, explaining where it had come from and the steps he had already taken. He watched her face pale as she read the false accusations, her hand trembling slightly as she set the paper on the table. He won't stop, she whispered. Not until he's destroyed me completely. Adam knelt before her, taking her hands in his as he had the night he declared his love. Listen to me, Lillian. This man may be powerful in Boston, but he's nothing here. You have people who know the truth about you, people who care about you. But if others see this, they won't, Adam assured her. Sheriff Parker is watching for more of these, and my cousin knows a lawyer in El Paso who can help clear your name legally. This Blackwell may have money and influence, but he's not the only one with connections. Lillian's eyes widened in surprise. You do that for me? Involve your family, spend money on lawyers. I'd do anything for you, Adam replied simply. Besides, Miguel owes me a favor after I helped him bring his herd to market last year when his wranglers came down with influenza. A ghost of a smile touched Lillian's lips. You make it sound so simple. It is, Adam insisted. We face this together just like we'll face everything else life throws at us, as partners. Lillian studied his face, drawing strength from his unwavering certainty. Partners, she repeated softly. Then more firmly, yes, together we'll end this once and for all. Over the following days, they continued wedding preparations while waiting for word from Miguel's lawyer friend. The town remained blissfully unaware of the wanted poster, and no strangers arrived asking questions about Lillian Lawrence. A week before the wedding, a telegram arrived from El Paso. Adam rode into town immediately to retrieve it, returning to find Lillian pacing anxiously on the porch. It's good news, he announced, handing her the telegram. The lawyer says he can file papers in Boston challenging the warrant. He needs affidavits from us describing what really happened and any evidence we can provide. Lillian read the telegram, hope dawning in her eyes. I still have the few documents I saved from the fire proof of Harrison's embezzlement. They're hidden in the lining of my journal. I was afraid to show them to anyone but with a proper lawyer. This could end it, Adam finished for her. We'll write the affidavits tonight and send them tomorrow. That evening, they sat at the kitchen table drafting their statements. Lillian recounted the events in Boston in careful detail, while Adam described the circumstances of her arrival in Silver Creek and the character she had demonstrated during her months there. As they worked, a strange noise from outside caught their attention, the sound of approaching horses, multiple riders by the sound of it, coming fast. Adam reached for his rifle, which stood always ready by the door. Stay inside, he instructed Lillian, moving to peer through the window. 3 riders approached the house, their horses lathered from hard riding. In the fading light, Adam recognized Sheriff Parker and 2 of his deputies. It's the sheriff, he told Lillian, lowering his rifle slightly but keeping it ready as he stepped onto the porch. Ramirez, Parker called, dismounting quickly. Got word from Sweetwater. Man matching Blackwell's description was asking questions at the stage office there yesterday. Described Lillian and mentioned Silver Creek specifically. Lillian had followed Adam outside despite his instructions. "He's here," she asked, her voice remarkably steady despite the fear evident in her eyes. "Not yet, but could be soon," Parker replied. "Stage from Sweetwater arrives tomorrow afternoon. I'll have deputies watching, but thought you should be prepared." Adam's arm went protectively around Lillian's shoulders. "Thank you for the warning, Sheriff. We'll be careful." After the sheriff and his men departed, promising to return in the morning, Adam and Lillian returned inside to finish their affidavits with renewed urgency. "If Harrison arrives tomorrow, we need to have these on their way to El Paso," Lillian said, her pen moving rapidly across the paper. "The more evidence the lawyer has, the stronger our position." Adam watched her with admiration, struck by her courage in the face of her fears. "We'll take them to town first thing in the morning," he promised. "And then we'll face whatever or whoever comes on that stage." They worked late into the night, Lillian carefully removing the hidden documents from her journal and attaching them to her statement. When they finally finished, Adam insisted she try to rest while he kept watch. "I'll wake you before dawn," he said, guiding her toward the bedroom. "We'll ride to town together." Lillian paused at the bedroom door, turning to face him. "Adam, if Harrison does come tomorrow, promise me you won't do anything rash. He's not worth you getting into trouble." Adam's expression was grim. "I won't start anything, but I will protect what's mine." "I mean it," she insisted. "I couldn't bear it if something happened to you because of my past." Softening, Adam pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I promise to be careful. Now get some rest." Morning came too quickly, the eastern sky just beginning to lighten as they rode toward town, the precious affidavits and evidence securely packed in Adam's saddlebags. They reached the telegraph office as it opened, sending their documents to El Paso with instructions to deliver them immediately to Miguel's lawyer friend. "Now what?" Lillian asked as they stepped back into the street. "Now we wait," Adam replied, glancing toward the stage-coach station. "Stage isn't due until 2 o'clock. Sheriff Parker has men watching, but I'd feel better staying in town." They spent the morning at the church, where Lillian had been planning to prepare lessons for the following week. The familiar task helped calm her nerves, while Adam alternated between helping her move benches and stepping outside to scan the street. Noon came and went. As 2 o'clock approached, Adam suggested they move to the general store, which offered a clear view of the stage station while providing a public setting where confrontation was less likely. Martha, the shopkeeper's wife, greeted them warmly. "You two are in town early, shopping for wedding things." "Just running some errands," Adam replied vaguely. "Thought we might wait here for the stage. Lillian's expecting a package of fabric from Sweetwater." It wasn't entirely a lie. Lillian had ordered material for her wedding dress, but the half-truth sat uncomfortably between them as they browsed the store's offerings, both keeping one eye on the window. At precisely 2 o'clock, the stagecoach rumbled into view, dust billowing behind it as it pulled to a stop before the station. Sheriff Parker and a deputy positioned themselves casually nearby, while Adam moved Lillian to a position where they could observe without being immediately visible. 5 passengers disembarked: a middle-aged couple, a young man in a business suit, an elderly woman, and finally a well-dressed gentleman with a neatly trimmed beard and expensive luggage. "That's him," Lillian whispered, her hand gripping Adam's arm tightly. "That's Harrison." Adam studied the man who had caused Lillian so much pain. Harrison Blackwell carried himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to deference, his clothing and manner marking him as out of place in the dusty Texas town. He spoke briefly to the stage-coach driver, then turned to survey the main street with an air of distaste. "Stay here," Adam instructed Lillian. "I'm going to speak with the sheriff." Before she could protest, Adam slipped out the back door of the shop and circled around to where Sheriff Parker stood watching Harrison from across the street. "That's him," Adam confirmed in a low voice. "The man who framed Lillian for arson and theft," Parker nodded. "I figured as much by the way he's looking around like he smells something bad. What do you want to do, Ramirez?" "I want him gone from Silver Creek," Adam replied bluntly. "But legally, no sense giving him ammunition against Lillian." "Smart thinking," the sheriff approved. Let's approach him together, official welcome to town, so to speak. They crossed the street openly, Parker's badge clearly visible on his chest as they approached Harrison, who was speaking with the station master. "Afternoon," Parker said pleasantly. "Welcome to Silver Creek. I'm Sheriff Parker, and this is Adam Ramirez, one of our local ranchers." Harrison looked them over with barely concealed disdain. "Harrison Blackwell, I'm looking for information about a young woman who may have passed through here some months ago, Lillian Lawrence. It's a matter of some urgency." "Mind if I ask what your interest in Miss Lawrence might be?" Parker inquired, his tone still casual though his eyes had hardened. "She's wanted for questioning in Boston regarding a fire at the university and the theft of department funds," Harrison replied smoothly. "As her father's colleague and executor of his estate, I'm concerned for her welfare and wish to clear up this unfortunate situation." "Is that so?" Adam said, unable to keep the edge from his voice. "Funny, we heard a different story. About a man who embezzled funds, then framed a young woman when she discovered his crime." Harrison's expression darkened. "I don't know what lies Miss Lawrence has told you, but I can assure you, we don't much care for your assurances, Mr. Blackwell," Sheriff Parker interrupted. "What we do care about is the well-being of our citizens, and Miss Lawrence has become a valued member of this community." "So she is here," Harrison said, a triumphant gleam in his eye. "I demand to speak with her immediately." "You're not in a position to demand anything," Adam replied coldly. "This isn't Boston, and your influence means nothing here." Harrison's face reddened with anger. "I have a warrant based on false accusations," came Lillian's clear voice from behind them. Adam turned to see Lillian approaching, her head held high despite the slight tremor in her hands. She carried a small parcel, which she extended to Harrison. "What I do have are these copies of the documents I salvaged from the fire. Proof of your embezzlement, with my father's notes in the margins showing he was aware of your activities and planning to report you." Her voice grew stronger with each word. "The originals are currently on their way to a lawyer in El Paso who will be filing papers to have the warrant against me dismissed." Harrison stared at the offered papers, his complexion growing ashen. "You're bluffing. Those documents were destroyed." "Not all of them," Lillian replied calmly. "I managed to save these few pages, enough to raise serious questions about who really committed fraud at the university." A small crowd had gathered, attracted by the confrontation. Mayor Collins pushed his way forward, frowning at Harrison. "What's happening here, Sheriff?" he demanded. Parker quickly explained the situation, including the wanted poster and Harrison's arrival. The mayor listened, his expression growing increasingly stern. "Mr. Blackwell," he said finally, "Silver Creek may be small, but we take care of our own. Miss Lawrence has proven herself a valuable member of this community, serving as our school teacher and contributing to our town's welfare. Whatever disputes you have with her will need to be resolved through proper legal channels." "This is absurd," Harrison sputtered, looking around at the hostile faces surrounding him. "She's a fugitive, she's my fiancée," Adam interrupted firmly. "And we're getting married in 6 days. Any attempt to interfere with that will be met with resistance from not just me, but this entire town." Harrison's eyes darted between Lillian and Adam, calculation replacing anger in his expression. "I see I've been misled about Miss Lawrence's situation," he said finally, his tone smoothing into something more conciliatory. "Perhaps we could discuss this privately, Lillian, for old time's sake." "There's nothing to discuss," Lillian replied. "Take these copies of the documents as a warning, Harrison. The originals will be used to clear my name. I suggest you return to Boston and prepare your defense before the university board discovers what you've done." For a moment, it seemed Harrison might continue to argue. Then, with a last venomous look at Lillian, he snatched the papers from her hand and turned to the station master. "When does the next stage leave?" he demanded. "Tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock, the man replied, clearly intimidated by Harrison's manner. "I'll need a room for the night then," Harrison said through clenched teeth. "Hotel's full up," Mayor Collins responded immediately, though Adam knew for a fact the small establishment had several vacant rooms. "But I'm sure the sheriff can find you accommodations in our jail if you're desperate." The message was clear. Harrison was not welcome in Silver Creek, and the town stood united behind Lillian. With as much dignity as he could muster, Harrison collected his luggage and stalked off toward the hotel, presumably to argue his case directly with the proprietor. Once he was out of earshot, Sheriff Parker turned to Lillian. "Brave thing you did, confronting him like that, but we'll keep an eye on him until that stage leaves tomorrow." "Thank you, Sheriff," Lillian replied, the adrenaline of the confrontation leaving her visibly shaky. Adam wrapped an arm around her shoulders, drawing her close. "Let's go home," he suggested softly. "You've faced enough for one day." The ride back to the ranch was quiet, both processing the events in town. As they approached the house, however, Lillian broke the silence. "I never thought I'd be able to face him," she admitted. "When I ran from Boston, I was terrified of him, of being alone, of an uncertain future. But today, with you beside me and knowing the town supported me." She took a deep breath. "I wasn't afraid anymore, I felt strong." Adam helped her down from Thunder, keeping his hands at her waist a moment longer than necessary. "You've always been strong, Lillian, from the moment I saw you standing tall despite having lost everything." She reached up to touch his face gently. "Not everything, I found you, didn't I? Or rather, you found me." "Best thing I ever did," Adam murmured, leaning down to kiss her softly. The following morning, Sheriff Parker rode out to the ranch with news. Harrison Blackwell had departed on the early stage, his dignity somewhat diminished by having spent the night in the stable behind the hotel after being refused a room. "Don't think we'll be seeing him again," Parker reported with satisfaction. "Mayor Collins made it quite clear what would happen if he returned to cause more trouble." 3 days later, a telegram arrived from El Paso. The lawyer had filed the necessary papers challenging the Boston warrant and expected it to be dismissed given the evidence provided. Lillian's name would be officially cleared within weeks. With this final shadow lifted from their future, Lillian and Adam turned their full attention to wedding preparations. The ceremony would be small but meaningful, held in the church where Lillian taught and attended by the entire town that had become their extended family. On the morning of November 15th, Lillian stood in Mrs. Wilson's parlor, where she had spent the night in accordance with tradition. Her wedding dress, a simple but elegant creation of ivory cotton with delicate lace trim, had been sewn by her own hands with help from the town's women. "You look beautiful," Mrs. Wilson said, carefully arranging the wreath of dried autumn flowers in Lillian's auburn hair. "Adam Ramirez won't know what hit him." Lillian smiled, touching the silver locket at her throat, her mother's, paired now with her mother's hairbrush as her only connection to her past life. "I still can't quite believe this is happening," she admitted. "When I stepped off that stagecoach 3 months ago, I had nothing. Now I have everything I ever wanted. And more than you deserve, if you ask me," came a familiar voice from the doorway. Lillian turned to see Martha from the general store entering with a small package. "A wedding gift," the older woman explained, handing it to Lillian. "Something I've been saving for the right occasion." Unwrapping the paper, Lillian gasped at the delicate blue handkerchief embroidered with tiny white flowers. "It's beautiful. My mother made it," Martha explained. "Said every bride needs something blue for luck. And speaking of luck, there's a handsome cowboy waiting at the church who looks like he might burst with happiness." At the church, Adam stood nervously by the altar, dressed in his finest clothes, a clean white shirt, black vest, and the new boots he'd ordered from the leather worker in Sweetwater. Sheriff Parker stood beside him as best man, offering quiet encouragement. "She'll be here," Parker assured him, noticing Adam's frequent glances toward the door. "I know," Adam replied, adjusting his collar for the 10th time. "Just can't believe this is really happening. 3 months ago I was alone, content enough but missing something I couldn't name. Then she arrived and suddenly—" "Everything made sense," Parker finished with a knowing smile. "That's how it happens sometimes. My Sarah and I were the same way." The church had filled with townsfolk, all dressed in their Sunday best. Mayor Collins and his wife sat in the front row, alongside Mrs. Wilson's husband and the other prominent citizens of Silver Creek. In the back rows sat the ranch hands from neighboring properties, the station master, and even the bartender from the saloon who had closed his establishment for the occasion. When the church door opened and Lillian appeared on the arm of Pastor Williams, who had agreed to both give her away and perform the ceremony, a collective murmur of appreciation rippled through the congregation. But Adam heard nothing, saw nothing but Lillian, her radiant smile, the love shining in her eyes as she walked toward him, toward their future together. The ceremony itself passed in a blur. Adam remembered speaking his vows in a voice steadier than he had expected, remembered the warmth of Lillian's hand in his as he slipped the gold wedding band onto her finger, remembered the pastor pronouncing them husband and wife. But most of all, he remembered their first kiss as a married couple, tender and promising, sealing their commitment before God and their community. The celebration afterward at the town hall lasted well into the evening. There was dancing to music provided by a fiddle player from a nearby ranch, a feast contributed by every household in town, and no shortage of well wishes for the newlyweds. As sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and gold, Adam led Lillian outside for a moment of quiet amid the festivities. "Happy Mrs. Ramirez?" he asked, still savoring the sound of her new name. "More than I can express," she replied, leaning into his embrace, "though I'm looking forward to going home, our home." "Soon," he promised, brushing a kiss against her temple. "Just as soon as we can slip away without offending the entire town." They returned to the celebration, accepting congratulations and sharing dances with various well-wishers. Finally, as the evening grew late, they made their farewells and departed for the ranch, riding double on thunder under a canopy of stars. The house had been transformed in their absence. Mrs. Wilson and several other women had visited that morning, leaving fresh linens on the bed, flowers in vases throughout the rooms, and a wedding supper keeping warm by the fire. "Welcome home, Mrs. Ramirez," Adam said softly, lifting Lillian from the horse and carrying her across the threshold as tradition demanded. Inside, he set her gently on her feet, both suddenly shy in this familiar space that now held new meaning. They shared the wedding supper by candlelight, speaking of the day's events and the future that stretched before them. Later, as Lillian prepared for bed behind a screen that hadn't been necessary before, Adam banked the fire and blew out all but one candle. When she emerged in her nightdress, her hair loose around her shoulders, he thought he had never seen anything more beautiful. "I love you," he said simply, opening his arms to her. She stepped into his embrace without hesitation. "And I love you. Thank you for carrying my burden when everyone else turned away." "It was never a burden," Adam murmured against her hair. "It was the greatest blessing of my life." In the months that followed, Adam and Lillian Ramirez built their life together on the foundation of that first unconditional acceptance. Winter brought snow to Silver Creek, transforming the landscape into a glittering wonderland that kept them close to home. They spent evenings by the fire, planning for spring planting and discussing Adam's idea of breeding horses specifically for ranch work. Lillian continued teaching, now with the full support of a newly formed school board and plans for a proper schoolhouse to be built in the spring. The children adored her, and parents noted significant improvements in their children's education. In February, a letter arrived from the lawyer in El Paso confirming that all charges against Lillian had been officially dismissed. Moreover, the university in Boston had launched an investigation into Harrison Blackwell's activities based on the evidence Lillian had provided. Harrison had resigned his position and left Boston, his reputation in tatters. "It's really over," Lillian said wonderingly, setting down the letter. "I never have to look over my shoulder again." Adam pulled her into his arms. "You can look forward now, we both can." Spring brought new life to the ranch, calves in the pastures, foals in the corral, and wildflowers carpeting the hills. Adam's breeding program showed promising results, with 2 of his trained horses selling for record prices in San Antonio. But the most precious new life came in early May, when Lillian shared the news she had suspected for several weeks. She was expecting their first child. "Are you certain?" Adam asked, his voice hushed with wonder as they sat together on the porch swing watching the sunset. "The doctor in town confirmed it yesterday," she replied, placing his hand over her still flat stomach. "We should welcome our child just before Christmas." Adam's face transformed with joy as he gathered her close. "A baby," he murmured, "our baby." "I was thinking," Lillian said softly, "if it's a boy, we might name him after your father, and if it's a girl, perhaps after your mother." Tears glistened in Adam's eyes at the suggestion. "They would have loved you," he told her, "almost as much as I do." As summer blazed across Texas, Silver Creek celebrated the completion of its first proper schoolhouse. Lillian, now showing visibly in carefully altered dresses, oversaw the arrangement of desks and books, planning lessons for the fall term even though she would need a substitute when the baby arrived. Adam expanded their house, adding a nursery adjacent to their bedroom and a larger kitchen where Lillian could teach their child to bake the biscuits that had become legendary in town. The garden doubled in size, now including fruit trees that would bear in future years a literal planting of roots in the soil of their shared life. In late October, with autumn painting the landscape in golds and reds, Lillian's substitute teacher arrived, a young woman from Sweetwater with teaching experience who would handle classes through the winter. Lillian spent weeks ensuring she was prepared, sharing lesson plans and insights about each student's needs. As her time grew near, the women of Silver Creek took turns visiting the ranch, bringing baby clothes, advice, and helping hands for the heavier household chores. Mrs. Wilson, herself a mother of 4, promised to come stay when labor began. December arrived with unseasonably mild weather, as if nature itself were preparing a gentle welcome for the newest Ramirez. On the evening of December 18th, Lillian felt the first pains while she and Adam sat by the fire, reading from one of his mother's books of poetry. "Adam," she said calmly, setting aside the book, "I think you should ride for Mrs. Wilson now." The hours that followed tested them both, Lillian with the physical demands of childbirth, Adam with the helplessness of waiting while the women attended his wife. He paced the main room, occasionally allowed to enter the bedroom to offer encouragement and support before being shooed out again by Mrs. Wilson. Just after midnight, as December 19th began, a new cry joined the night sounds of the ranch, strong and indignant, announcing a healthy arrival. When Mrs. Wilson finally invited him in, Adam found Lillian propped against pillows, tired but radiant, cradling a small bundle. "Adam," she said softly, her voice filled with wonder, "come meet your daughter." Approaching with reverence, Adam gazed down at the tiny face peeking from the blanket, pink-cheeked, with a dusting of dark hair, and when she briefly opened them, eyes that held the promise of her mother's emerald green. "She's perfect," he whispered, carefully taking the bundle when Lillian offered it. The weight of his daughter in his arms awakened feelings he had never known existed: fierce protectiveness, overwhelming love, humbling responsibility. "Hello, little one, I'm your papa." "I thought we might call her Maria Elena after your mother," Lillian suggested, watching the tender interaction with tears of joy. "Maria Elena Ramirez," Adam repeated, testing the name. "It's beautiful, she's beautiful." He sat carefully on the edge of the bed, cradling their daughter with one arm while taking Lillian's hand with his free one. "Thank you for this gift, for everything." Lillian squeezed his hand, her eyes reflecting the same wonder and gratitude. "Thank you for seeing value in me when others saw only a burden, for carrying me until I could stand on my own, for building this life with me." In that moment, surrounded by the family they had created through love and faith in each other, Adam and Lillian knew they had found a happiness beyond anything they could have imagined on that dusty day in Silver Creek. What had begun as an act of kindness had blossomed into a love story that would sustain them through all the seasons of their lives together, a testament to the power of seeing beyond burdens to the blessings they might become. As Christmas approached, the Ramirez Ranch welcomed a steady stream of visitors eager to meet little Maria Elena and congratulate the new parents. Sheriff Parker brought a handcrafted wooden cradle, Mayor Collins and his wife delivered a silver baby spoon, and the children from Lillian's class created a book of drawings and good wishes for their teacher's daughter. The future stretched before them, bright with promise. Adam's horse breeding program would eventually make the Ramirez name known throughout Texas for quality stock. Lillian would return to teaching the following year, eventually becoming the principal of Silver Creek's growing school. Maria Elena would be joined by 2 brothers in the years to come, all 3 children raised with their father's strength and their mother's resilience. But on that Christmas Eve, as snow began to fall gently outside the windows of their expanded home, Adam and Lillian thought only of the present moment, the miracle of their daughter sleeping peacefully in her cradle. the warmth of the fire reflecting the warmth in their hearts, and the journey that had brought them together against all odds. "Merry Christmas, my love," Adam murmured, drawing Lillian close as they stood watching over their sleeping child. "Merry Christmas," she replied, resting her head against his shoulder, "the merriest I've ever known." Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the Texas landscape in a blanket of white that mirrored the fresh start they had found together, pure, full of possibility and beautiful beyond words. From burden to blessing, their story had come full circle, writing itself into the history of Silver Creek and the hearts of all who witnessed love's transformative power.